You can never set about to meditate. It must happen without your seeking it out. If you seek it or ask how to meditate, then the method will not only condition you further, but also strengthen your own present conditioning. Meditation really is the denial of the whole structure of thought. Thought is structural, reasonable or unreasonable, objective or unhealthy. And when it tries to meditate from reason or from a contradictory and neurotic state, it will inevitably project that which it is, and will take its own structure as a serious reality. It is like a believer meditating upon their own belief. They strengthen and sanctify that which they, out of fear, have created. The word is the picture or the image whose idolatry becomes the end. Sound makes its own cage, and then the noise of thought is of the cage. And it is this word and its sound which divides the observer and the observed. The word is not only a unit of language, not only a sound, but also a symbol, a recollection of any event which unleashes the movement of memory, of thought. Meditation is the complete absence of this word. The root of fear is the machinery of the word. In the light of silence, all problems are dissolved. This light is not born of the ancient movement of thought. It is not born either out of self-revealing knowledge. It is not lit by time, nor by any action of will. It comes about in meditation. Meditation is not a private affair. It is not a personal search for pleasure. Pleasure is always separative and dividing. In meditation, the dividing line between you and me disappears. In it, the light of silence destroys the knowledge of the me. The me can be studied indefinitely, for it varies from day to day, but its reach is always limited, however extensive it is thought to be. Silence is freedom, and freedom comes with the finality of complete order. Possessions possess us more than we possess them. The castle, the house, the pictures, the books, the knowledge, they become far more vital, far more important than the human being. The sadness of life is this: the emptiness that we try to fill with every conceivable trick of the mind. But that emptiness remains. Its sadness is the vain effort to possess. From this attempt comes domination and the assertion of the me, with its empty words and rich memories of things that are gone and will never come back. It is this emptiness and loneliness that isolating thought breeds and keeps nourished by the knowledge it has created. It is this sadness of vain effort that is destroying human beings. Their thought is not so good as the computer, and we have only the instrument of thought with which to meet the problems of life. So we are destroyed by them. It is this sadness of wasted life which probably we will be aware of only at the moment of death. And then it will be too late. So the possessions, the character, the achievements, the domesticated house become terribly important. And this sadness drives away love. Either you have one or the other. You cannot have both. One breeds cynicism and bitterness, which are only the fruit of humans. The other lies beyond all woods and hills. Imagination and thought have no place in meditation. They lead to bondage, and meditation brings freedom. The good and the pleasurable are two different things. The one brings freedom, and the other leads to the bondage of time. Meditation is the freedom from time. Time is the observer, the experiencer, the thinker, and time is thought. Meditation is the going beyond and above the activities of time. Imagination is always in the field of time, and however concealed and secretive it may be, it will act. This action of thought will inevitably lead to conflict and to the bondage of time. To meditate is to be innocent of time. To deny all morality is to be moral, for the accepted morality is the morality of respectability. And I'm afraid we all crave to be respected, which is to be recognised as good citizens in a rotten society. Respectability is very profitable and ensures you a good job and a steady income. The accepted morality of greed, envy, and hate is the way of the establishment. When you totally deny all this, not with your lips, but with your heart, then you are really moral. For this morality springs out of love, and not out of any motive of profit, of achievement, of place in the hierarchy. There cannot be this love if you belong to a society in which you want to find fame, recognition, a position. Since there is no love in this, its morality is immorality. When you deny all this from the very bottom of your heart, then there is a virtue that is encompassed by love. To meditate is to transcend time. Time is the distance that thought travels in its achievements. The travelling is always along the old path, covered over with a new coating, new sights, but always the same road, leading nowhere except to pain and sorrow. It is only when the mind transcends time that truth ceases to be an abstraction. Then bliss is not an idea derived from pleasure, but an actuality that is not verbal. The emptying of the mind of time is a silence of truth. And the seeing of this is the doing. So there is no division between the seeing and the doing. In the interval between seeing and doing is born conflict, misery, and confusion. That which has no time is the everlasting. On every table there were daffodils, young, fresh, just out of the garden, with the bloom of spring on them still. On a side table there were lilies, creamy white with sharp yellow centres. To see this creamy white and the brilliant yellow of those many daffodils was to see the blue sky, ever expanding, limitless, silent. Almost all the tables were taken by people talking very loudly and laughing. At a table nearby, a woman was surreptitiously feeding her dog with the meat she could not eat. They all seemed to have huge helpings, and it was not a pleasant sight to see people eating. Perhaps it may be barbarous to eat publicly. A man across the room had filled himself with wine and meat and was just lighting a big cigar, and a look of beatitude came over his fat face. His equally fat wife lit a cigarette, and both of them appeared to be lost to the world. And there they were, the yellow daffodils, and nobody seemed to care. And they were there for decorative purposes that had no meaning at all. And as you watched them, their yellow brilliance filled the noisy room. Colour has this strange effect upon the eye. It wasn't so much that the eye absorbed the colour, as that the colour seemed to fill your being. You were that colour. You didn't become the colour. You were of it, without identification or name. The anonymity, which is innocence. Where there is no anonymity, there is violence in all its different forms. But you forgot the world, the smoke-filled room, the cruelty of man, and the red, ugly meat. Those shapely daffodils seem to take you beyond all time. Love is like that. In it, there is no time, space, or identity. It is the identity that breeds pleasure and pain. It is the identity that brings hate and war and builds a wall around people, around each one, each family and community. Humans reach over the wall to other humans, but they too are enclosed. Morality is a word that bridges the two, and so it becomes ugly and vain. Love isn't like that. It is like that wood across the way, always renewing itself, because it is always dying. There is no permanency in it, which thought seeks. It is a movement which thought can never understand, touch, or feel. The feeling of thought and the feeling of love are two different things. The one leads to bondage, and the other to the flowering of goodness. The flowering is not within the area of any society, of any culture, or of any religion, whereas bondage belongs to all societies, religious beliefs, and faith in otherness. Love is anonymous, therefore not violent. Pleasure is violent, for desire and will are moving factors in it. Love cannot be begotten by thought or by good works. The denial of the total process of thought becomes the beauty of action, which is love. Without this, there is no bliss of truth. And over there, on that table, were the daffodils. Meditation is the awakening of bliss. It is both of the senses and transcending them. It has no continuity, for it is not of time. The happiness and the joy of relationship, the sight of a cloud carrying the earth, and the light of spring on the leaves are the delight of the eye and of the mind. This delight can be cultivated by thought and given a duration in the space of memory. But it is not the bliss of meditation, in which is included the intensity of the senses. The senses must be acute and in no way distorted by thought, by the discipline of conformity and social morality. The freedom of the senses is not the indulgence of them. The indulgence is the pleasure of thought. Thought is like the smoke of a fire, and bliss is the fire without the cloud of smoke that brings tears to the eyes. Pleasure is one thing, and bliss another. Pleasure is the bondage of thought, and bliss is beyond and above thought. The foundation of meditation is the understanding of thought and of pleasure, with their morality and the discipline which gives comfort. The bliss of meditation is not of time or duration. It is beyond both, and therefore not measurable. Its ecstasy is not in the eye of the beholder, nor is it an experience of the thinker. Thought cannot touch it with its words and symbols and the confusion it breeds. It is not a word that can take root in thought and be shaped by it. This bliss comes out of complete silence. The sound of the church bell came through the woods across the water and over the deep meadow. The sound was different according to whether it came through the woods or over the open meadows or across the fast-running, noisy stream. Sound, like light, has a quality that silence brings. The deeper the silence, the more the beauty of the sound is heard. That evening, with the sun riding just above the western hills, the sound of those church bells was quite extraordinary. It was as though you heard the bells for the first time. They were not as old as in the ancient cathedrals, but they carried the feeling of that evening. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was the longest day of the year, and the sun was setting as far north as it ever would. We hardly ever listen to the sound of a dog's bark, or to the cry of a child, or the laughter of a person as they pass by. We separate ourselves from everything, and then from this isolation, look and listen to all things. It is this separation which is so destructive, for in that lies all conflict and confusion. If you listened to the sound of those bells with complete silence, you would be riding on it. Or rather, the sound would carry you across the valley and over the hill. The beauty of it is felt only when you and the sound are not separate, when you are part of it. Meditation is the ending of the separation, not by any action of will or desire, or by seeking the pleasure of things not already tasted. Meditation is not a separate thing from life. It is the very essence of life, the very essence of daily living. To listen to those bells, to hear the laughter of that peasant as he walks by with his wife, to listen to the sound of the bell on the bicycle of the little girl as she passes by. It is the whole of life, and not just a fragment of it, that meditation opens. If you walk through the little town with its one street of many shops, the baker, the camera shop, the bookshop, and the open restaurant, under the bridge and past the courtier, over another bridge, past the sawmill, then enter the wood and continue along by the stream, looking at all the things you have passed, with your eyes and all your senses fully awake, but without a single thought in your mind, then you will know what it means to be without separation. You follow that stream for a mile or two, again without a single flutter of thought, looking at the rushing water, listening to its noise, seeing the colour of it, the grey-green mountain stream, looking at the trees and the blue sky through the branches, and at the green leaves, again without a single thought, without a single word. Then you will know what it means to have no space between you and the blade of grass. If you pass on through the meadows with their 1,000 flowers of every colour imaginable, from bright red to yellow and purple, and their bright green grass washed clean by last night's rain, rich and verdant, again without a single movement of the machinery of thought, then you will know what love is. To look at the blue sky, the high, full-blown clouds, the green hills with their clear lines against the sky, the rich grass and the fading flower. To look without a word of yesterday. Then, when the mind is completely quiet, silent, undisturbed by any thought, when the observer is completely absent, then there is unity. Not that you are united with the flower, or with the cloud, or with those sweeping hills. Rather, there is a feeling of complete non-being, in which the division between you and another ceases. If you can look at it all, without a word, without a measure, without any association, then the quarrel between you and another ceases. This state, without the word, without thought, is the expanse of mind that has no boundaries, no frontiers within which the I and the not I can exist. Don't think this is imagination, or some flight of fancy, or some desired mystical experience. It is not. It is as actual as the bee on that flower, or the little girl on her bicycle, or the man going up the ladder to paint the house. The whole conflict of the mind in its separation has come to an end. You look without the look of the observer. You look without the value of the word and the measurement of yesterday. The look of love is different from the look of thought. The one leads in a direction where thought cannot follow, and the other leads to separation, conflict, and sorrow. From this sorrow, you cannot go to the other. The distance between the two is made by thought, and thought cannot by any stride reach the other. In the animal, the instincts to follow and to obey are natural and necessary for survival. But in human beings, they become a danger. To follow and obey in the individual becomes imitation, conformity to a pattern of society which humans themselves have built. Without freedom, intelligence cannot function. To understand the nature of obedience and acceptance in action brings freedom. Freedom is not the instinct to do what one wants. In a vast, complex society, that isn't possible. Hence the conflict between the individual and society, between the many and the one. No dynamic golden pill is ever going to solve our human problems. They can be solved only by bringing about a radical revolution in the mind and the heart of human beings. This demands hard, constant work, seeing and listening, and thus being highly sensitive. The highest form of sensitivity is the highest intelligence, and no drug ever invented by man will give this intelligence. Without this intelligence, there is no love. And love is relationship. Without this love, there is no dynamic balance in human beings. This love cannot be given by the priests or their gods, by the philosophers, or by the golden drug. Love and beauty cannot be separated. Without love, there is no beauty. They are interlocked, inseparable. We have exercised our minds, our intellect, our cleverness to such an extent, to such destructiveness, that they predominate, violating what may be called love. Of course, the word is not the real thing at all, any more than that shadow of the tree is the tree. We shan't be able to find out what love is if we don't step down from our cleverness, our heights of intellectual sophistication, if we don't feel the brilliant water and are not aware of that new grass. Is it possible to find this love in museums, in the ornate beauty of church rituals, in the cinema, or in the face of a woman? Isn't it important for us to find out for ourselves how we have alienated ourselves from the very common things of life? Not that we should neurotically worship nature, but if we lose touch with nature, doesn't it also mean that we are losing touch with ourselves?